in every category. Just dial pound 250, say micro, and Pure Talk's U.S. customer service will take it from there. Again, pound 250 micro. And yes, I told you so.
Rick Borick talks about the emotions of stock market investing.
At what point would you rethink your decision that you're invested in the stock market? And you'll notice that someone who answered that question 6 months ago saying, I'm not going to panic until it's down 30%, calls you up on the phone and says, it's down 8, what's going on? And I says, what happened to the 30% guy, right?
Unleash Your Wealth, Saturday at 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from The Signature, a division of Esquire Bank Studios.
This hour of the Shaun Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
My next guest is the author of a book. In 2021, I believe, like Karnak, she saw the problem and she wanted to help desist, detrans, and detox getting your child out of the gender cult 5 years ago. She is since the co-founder of Advocates Protecting Children and the Arlington Parents Coalition. Maria Keffler, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for inviting me on tonight, Shaun.
Well, this is a very interesting topic. We have faced this. In fact, it was a girl from my old neighborhood that daughter was subjected to a boy changing in the girls' room. And in Virginia, that is the case where the boy in the girls' room assaulted and molested the girl and was protected by the school system, if memory serves me correct. And then he did it again where he was moved. Do I have that right?
You do. Yeah, that was in Loudoun County. There was a boy identifying as a girl, and the first time he did it, if I remember correctly, they just moved him to a different school. And then it, later came out that the school was trying to hide it. And yes, he did it twice. It's unbelievable that this is where we are, that, schools are telling kids that their bodies don't inform, who they actually are, their sex as male or female, that culturally we seem to have collectively decided that we don't know what women and men are. And it's shocking and it's horrific and it's harming people, and it really needs to stop.
Well, and it fits into I did not realize this is still going on. I moved out of a Democrat-controlled area, and I'll never live in another Democrat-controlled area. But you're telling me that right now schools can call your child by another sex and not tell the parents. I thought we were through with all of this, or is it only in the decent areas? And that's the other part of the story. This is such an abuse of women specifically. Men, have a little different advantage. We'll slap the taste out of your mouth. At least the ones I grew up with will. But women, you're subjecting them to this ridiculousness. And ultimately, it's got to be places other than Florida that stand up for the kids. I thought Virginia had moved past this, and I thought Donald Trump made it so that they couldn't do this any longer.
Our current administration, the current Board of Education is doing a lot to push back, but we've had really since about 2016, 2017, 18, we've just had policies put into place in the schools and in institutions, all over the place, medical institutions, the counseling and therapy organizations, the transgender pro-advocates or activists have gotten these policies pushed in that are really hard to push back on. And that's what we're fighting against. And it's not just in Virginia. It's not just in California and in Oregon and in the, what you think of as kind of the wacky blue places. It's everywhere because it's coming down from the teachers' unions. And it's really seated in every aspect of the culture.
Maria, watching what has happened to school systems over the last 20 years specifically, but watching what has really happened, it's always kind of it reminds me of kind of creating the disruption, the smokescreen to hide the money. I learned this very early on when they started to public schools specifically, but not exclusively, were paid to have kids on ADHD medication, ADD, and all of the rise of the drugged children. When you look at this instance where it is so preposterous, this whole thing to me is preposterous. It's clearly mental illness on display. And they were able to hide it under sexual orientation, which I'm more shocked that there aren't homosexuals that are coming out and saying, listen, this is not part of homosexuality. This is completely aside from it. But we adapted to this LGBTQ and whatever they want to call it. But there's a tremendous amount of money. This is an industry, this transgender industry. And I can't help but notice how many of the people on it or in this world are also on government sustenance of one form or another. Do we know what the cost to taxpayers is for this transgender movement? Because I'm curious to know, is there somebody paying for their own transition? Have you stumbled across somebody who's actually paying for it? It looks to me like to be another expansion of welfare in one form or another.
Well, this is one of the problems we have in this country. Because we have privatized health care, we can't really see those numbers. I can't call up a pediatric gender clinic, which, by the way, there's over 300 gender clinics in the United States now, and they're all private. I can't call one of them and say, how many people have you had? How many have you turned away? Where's the money coming from? Because it's HIPAA, it's all private. We're getting better numbers from places like the UK that have socialized healthcare where it's all public. But it is a huge moneymaker. That's really where it's coming from, is the medical and the medical industrial complex.
Maria, we have the illusion of private healthcare when you really think about it. When 91, and this is a staggering percentage, but it's the true percentage, 91% of Americans are subsidized because what Barack Obama did is he nationalized our healthcare through the back door. So it's an illusion of private. When the reality, there's a tremendous amount of government financing in what appears to be private. So they still can have that veil up of HEPA. But when you see the massive costs of Medicaid and Medicare, and you see, just your own eyes, when you look at these transgender communities, they're people who are living on government sustenance. And when you see this transition costs and then this big movement, because although the 300 is a shocking number, what else is shocking is the amount of these kids who are harmed from this, and they detransition. And they get airtime on my show and on our station, but it's really not played in the mainstream media. In fact, that's a big part of this puzzle that really isn't talked about. It's almost twice as expensive to detransition, let alone the damage you do to these kids forever. And they're harmed through pharmaceuticals. And once again, the pharmaceuticals cash out on the harming. The way I see it, am I off base?
You're not off base at all. No, if you do a search for a market report on sex reassignment surgery, and that's just surgery to try to change a woman's genitals to a man's or vice versa. I'm not even talking about the hormones, just sex reassignment surgery. It is I believe the current numbers are like $3.4 to $4.9 billion industry over the next 5 years. That's billion with a B. And when you talk about the hormones, one of the many insidious things about this is when somebody's on the wrong hormones for a while, when a woman is on testosterone or a man is on estrogen for a while, their body stops creating their own hormones. So even if they detransition, even if they say, you know what, I was wrong, I'm going to go back to living by my birth sex, they're very likely to have to pay the pharmaceutical companies for synthetic hormones that their bodies stopped making. So the pharmaceutical companies don't care whether they transition or detransition or whatever. They've got a lifelong medical consumer.
Maria, this is such the timing and the way in which this is lined up, where we now know the text messages from that fraud Fauci, his private text message versus what he said. He knew specifically he was poisoning Americans. This entire industry knows exactly what it is doing. You are somebody who just did the research and understands all of this, and you studied this, and you watch it with your own eyes. But this is not just malpractice. This is intentional poisoning, damaging of vital, healthy human beings, and it's all in the name of profit. Does there not have to be a couple of smart lawyers? I mean, are there only lawyers that slip and fall? People in a Jewel grocery store or in that are not willing to take on this big dog? Have they some sort of immunity I'm unaware of? Did it fall under the Operation Warp Speed where they're held harmless for this? You would think that in this kind of abuse of what a human being is, pharmaceutical companies would be liable to the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people they've harmed.
Oh, well, already we're seeing the lawsuits rolling out, and unfortunately, we've said for a while it's going to take lawsuits to turn this around, and that's what's happening. There have been 2 gender clinics that have had multi-million-dollar awards against them, and they've had to pay out. It is turning around. Right now, there are no codes. There are no medical codes for detransition. So when somebody decides to go back to living by their birth sex, the companies, the insurance companies, aren't paying for that because there's no codes for it. But codes are being worked on so that detransitioners can get the help they need. When insurance companies start having to pay for the detransition services, you bet they're going to be putting the brakes on this. It has just been like a greased pig let loose in a school, for lack of any better analogy, because people just, by and large, can't believe it's happening. And I feel really sensational sometimes when I talk about it, but I'm not making any of this up. Anybody can fact check me, do the research. This is happening, and it's going to be on par with some of the worst medical abuses. I mean, this is Joseph Mengele level stuff that's happening.
And one of the co-defendants, in my opinion, should be the teacher unions across the country, the teacher schools, the school district. You know, it's amazing to me how they circumvent and sidestep this when they are the promoters. They are the ones who initiated this, and they're also the cover-up artists. The reason I asked you about that Virginia story, that is amazing to me. The girl was raped, and they took the scumbag who raped her, moved her, and he did it again. And somehow this has been able to stay out of the mainstream reporting on it. This was a story that was really about talk radio and maybe Fox News here and there. But this is something that, years ago when this country had a standard, this is an earth-shattering reality, not to mention the other insane acts of violence by trans promoters, transvestites, between the girl that shot up the Catholic school in Tennessee and they hid the manifesto to Charlie Kirk. And that trans Tifa movement. And, we have NGOs and grants that are very, very hard to trace. So I'm wondering, I know you wrote the book years and years ago, and I'm wondering if you're thinking about writing another book that exposes how much of American debt, because they don't redistribute taxpayer money anymore. We're way off that thanks to Obama. They're creating debt to create these foot soldier armies and to then use it to promote this agenda. There is such a thing as Antifa and Trans-Tifa. And I've always believed they're paid with public debt in the form of an NGO or a grant or some other policy that comes back to America to destroy it. Have you thought about, you wrote this book. You were like Karnak when you wrote this book. Nobody was talking about it when you wrote the book. So have you thought about following it up with an investigative, and we're paying for it for the cherry on the Screw You Sunday?
I think there are people who are working on that. There are people who are very focused on the policy, on the finances of it. We really focus on trying to protect children, and that's one thing I really want to emphasize. There are different groups of people who are trans-identified, and the children, the young people, like the teenagers and the prepubescent kids, most of them are hurting. They've got something going on. A lot of them are on the autism spectrum. We have kids who have prior trauma, who've been abused. They're looking for a fix for what's hurting them. And trans comes along and says, oh, whatever's bothering you, just transition to the other sex and that's going to fix it. Everything that's wrong with you is because you're the wrong sex. And I really want to convey that we need to have a lot of compassion and sympathy for the young people who are sucked into this. Now, the adults who are doing this, the parents who are transing their kids because it gives them social cred. I'm looking at you, some Hollywood people. The adult men, the autogynephiles, the Martin Rothblatts and James Pritzkers of the world, they are pushing this for nefarious reasons, and they're up to no good. But we need to understand that so many of these young people and kids, they're being sucked in, they're being lied to, they're being sold a bill of goods, and they're really just looking for a way to make whatever is hurting stop hurting. And that's hard to reckon with.
Well, what's fascinating, too, is you look at the massive... I thank God that I was born in the late 60s. I really do. Thank God. Because back then, there wasn't this push. There was really a small arena of people that were psychiatrists. You remember back in the day, they used to even have television shows about psychiatrists. They would be on shows, and they were very smart people, and they were very hesitant. And then this boom industry pops up. They're not psychiatrists, they're psychologists. And you start to look at all of these different people that are promoting this and making money from it. And I can't help but notice the massive growth since all of these pseudoscientists who think that they're Freud have popped up, the massive amount of drug consumption by Americans and the massive amount of mental problems, mental illness, and massive growth. I can't decide what's a bigger failure, the war on poverty or the American psychiatric industry as it exists. They bear a lot of responsibility for this as well, don't they? I mean, after all, they let these kids come right out of college, and all of a sudden you're a psychologist. Ooh, look at you. You're not qualified to sell me insurance at the airport from my rent-a-car, and all of a sudden you're a psychologist. What is the age group of psychologists that are in this industry? Is it the older psychiatrists or psychologists, or is it the young ones coming out of school?
It's really the younger ones. I'm a licensed teacher. I went through my teacher training back in the early 90s, and I saw none of this. There was absolutely no mention of gender, like nothing. No. And now the younger teachers who are coming out, they have had a steady diet of this through college. This is partly why they want to get it into the schools, because the younger you can get someone to believe something, the more persistent they are with the beliefs. The older teachers and therapists, by and large, I think are like, what is this? But they're being pressured by their professional organizations to fall in line. And when you think about people our age and a little bit older, you're in your career, you've been in it for 30 years, you're starting to look at retirement, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to rock the boat because I'm going to lose my retirement if I do. That's another insidious part of this, is silencing people who would stand up, because there are real things to lose if you buck the system with this.
Yeah, and the older you get, the harder it is to recover from economic collapse. And you know what's funny? The whole time you're talking, who's really making this possible is Wall Street in general. Wall Street is the shareholders. They're the ones who own all these companies that are perpetrating this very crime. And if really you wanted to make a statement, if there was a movement out there of people to say, you know what, am I invested in a company that's selling this to people, that's making this? And you think right back, it goes right back to our biggest problem. We are one of only 2 countries that can advertise prescription drugs, can advertise mind-altering, mood-altering drugs on television during commercials. We're hoisted by our own petard. Once again, it's our lack of pushback against the insane that normalizes the insanity of this transgender movement we face today. Thank God we're old enough to remember when it wasn't an issue. And I think when you wrote your book, I didn't go through it, but I'm guessing the last chapter of the book, Desist, Detrans, and Detox, Getting Your Child Out of the Gender Cult, would be homeschool your kids. As a teacher and somebody who's watched this, to me, I don't know how many Amish kids are transitioning, but I'm going to guess it's very little. How many homeschool kids are transitioning? I'm going to guess it's very little. This seems exclusively to an institution that is profiting from diagnosing kids with all kinds of problems as they can't teach them to read or do math, like the Chicago Public Schools. Is this the conclusion of the end of your book? Keep your kid away from the public school system?
It's the 3 things that we tell people, the 3 vectors where trans ideology is coming through is the public school and, unfortunately, even some private schools. You've got to look at the educational institution where you have your child, ask the hard questions, and if the trans juice is there, you've got to get them out. Also, smartphones and social media. No kid should have social media. I think you don't need social media till you're 18. I'm not even sure if you need it after that. It's just the Wild West there. And smartphones. Young kids should not have smartphones because you are giving them a door through which anyone in the world can walk through and grab them. So those are the three places. Now, it is so ubiquitous throughout the society, this gender ideology. I know of a family, I know them personally, they homeschooled their kids all the way through high school, and one of their sons got sucked into this in college, and it's a cult. I don't call it that as a sensation. It is a cult, and he got sucked into it and has been lost to them. So homeschooling, I absolutely recommend it. We pulled our kids from public school and homeschooled when we saw what was going on. I am all for that. However, that alone is not going to guarantee that your kids are kept out of this. You've got to be talking to your kids, telling them about this, teaching them truth, and maintaining that relationship, because those are the things that are going to work to prevent a cult from coming in and taking your kids away from you.
It's amazing, too, because we taught kids to not be proud of themselves or not be proud of their gender. And it's amazing how society, that's new as well. They teach kids not to judge versus when I was raised, you were taught to judge everything. I will never forget that. My grandfather used to say, judge everything and everybody and yourself the harshest. But be proud of what your ancestors have done and what you're capable of doing. You strip the kids of their own dignity. And then they're looking to please somebody by taking over their opinion and their judgment. So I love the idea that you've started this organization, and I think everybody should check it out. Where's the best place to check out Advocates Protecting Children?
Come to our website, advocatesprotectingchildren.org. We have resources to help anybody who's trying to deal with gender ideology from an honest and ethical perspective.
Yes, thank God. I remember the 90s. I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger in Kindergarten Cop. You remember that movie?
Yep. Oh, yeah. That was a great movie.
Oh, this is the best line of it.
Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina.
The better times, Maria Keffler. Thank you for making time for me. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. You have a great night.
You too. We'll be back with your calls and comments.
Call Shaun now. 312-642-5600.
Here's the deal. The government is over $38 trillion in debt, which means the IRS isn't slowing down.